Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is fear. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this word. The most common way that you're going to hear the verb fear used is to mean to be afraid of someone or something because that person or that thing is dangerous, painful, threatening. You just really think anything bad, right? So we should note that this particular meaning has a rather negative meaning to it. A second way that you might hear this verb fear used is if someone is expressing a regret or an apology. So for an example, we might imagine we're meeting a friend at a particular location and we realize we're not going to be on time. So you might call the friend and say, I fear I'm running late, right? So what's being communicated with that is, I'm sorry, I regret that I'm not going to be on time. You should know that fear is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing to form fearing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. The past tense, or I should say the base verb, fear, ends in this voice sound, so our ed is just going to make a d sound. Feared, feared. I want to point out one phrasal verb for you, and I'll note the meaning here is not significantly different than that primary definition we looked at earlier. But you might hear some people say they fear for, and one way to use this is that someone is expressing anxiety or apprehension on behalf of another person or maybe another group of people. Let's take a look at an example sentence. The mayor said she fears for Asian American safety after the repeated attacks. So one reason I felt that I should talk about this verb again is the horrible attack in Atlanta last week, and many people have expressed this fear. Now, the mayor here, in this particular sentence, is not identifying with that particular group, but she is expressing that she has anxiety or apprehension on behalf of this other large group of people. Now, let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we'll practice the past perfect and the simple present. You may remember in the past perfect, we are using this particular verb tense to note that something occurred in the past before another action or before a certain time period, a certain point in time, I should say. To make the past perfect, we're going to use a past form of have, which is had, and then we'll use the participle form of the verb. Here's an example sentence. Students had feared their grades would suffer when learning shifted online. So here, again, we're looking at a point in time when this action of fearing occurred. Now, if you want to make a negative past perfect sentence, all you need to do is insert not after had. You may hear some people use the contraction form hadn't, but if you find it easier to separate into two words, had not, that's perfectly fine. Here's an example. They hadn't feared being caught. So they were not afraid. If you want to make a yes or no question in the past perfect, the structure for this is going to be to start with had, then have your subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. Had she feared driving at night before the accident? So in this particular sentence, maybe we know that someone is scared to drive at night. And we're asking if this fear, this action, occurred prior to another event. Or maybe this is a new action or feeling. You may remember that we use our simple present verb tense to talk about facts, habits, and routines. We also use it to describe our feelings and our emotions. So it's pretty common that you'll hear fear used in the simple present. The thing to remember about affirmative sentences is that if your subject is I, you, we, or they, then you'll just use the base verb, and that's it. If your subject is he, she, or it, then we need to add an S to the base verb. Here's an example. He fears speaking out. The sentence is explaining at the present point in time, someone is afraid to maybe speak publicly or share something in a public way. If you want to make a negative simple present sentence, we're going to use do not in the base verb, and that's true if our subjects are I, you, we, or they, or does not and then the base verb. And that will match the subjects he, she, and it. You might hear some people say doesn't or don't, and those are fine, but if you're more comfortable saying does not and do not, that's okay too. Here's another example sentence. I don't fear the possible side effects from the COVID-19 vaccine. Right? Here, I'm not scared. I might have a headache or I might not feel so great for 24 hours, but that's okay. Now, if you want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, you'll start with do or does, then you'll have your subject, and then the base verb. Here's another example. Do you fear for your safety? Now, one more thing just to point out here, you'll notice in the negative and in making a yes or no question, I'm not adding an S to the base verb. And that's true in the negative or the yes or no question when my subjects are he, she, or it. I'm only adding an S in the affirmative or making a positive sentence. Now, let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb fear. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. So it has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. It can also have a few different meanings. We're going to take a look at two of them. One way to use the noun fear is to mean an unpleasant, anxious emotion that's caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous to yourself or others. And so kind of having this bad, negative feeling. An example of this, are your fears rational? So if someone said, I'm afraid of aliens attacking me. Well, have we seen that happen outside of a movie? Probably not. So that might not be a very likely thing that could happen. You might still have that particular fear, whereas other things are, many people fear being in a car accident. And that might be a more likely event given how many auto accidents there are every day. A second way you might hear the noun fear used is to speak about reverence and awe, especially toward God. So you might see this noun being used if you're reading a Bible or other religious document. An example sentence could be, the pastor spoke of the disciples' fear of God. So they're speaking of their reverence and awe. And so it's not so much a like, I'm scared kind of feeling. The next word we're going to take a look at is the adjective feared. It can mean producing fears in others. So here, what we're going to look at in our example sentence, she is the most feared teacher in school. So she causes others to feel scared. Sometimes this adjective is confused with a similar or related one. It's the adjective fearful. It's our next word here. This can have a couple different meanings, but I think the easiest way to remember it is to look at the suffix, the ending three letters. See, F-U-L, right? So we think of full of fear, and that's our first definition here. An example sentence could be, the parents are fearful for their children's safety. So the parents are scared. Okay? The parents aren't scaring the children. Important kind of distinction there. A second way some people use the adjective fearful is to mean that they are feeling afraid or anxious. An example of that could be, doctors are fearful of a fourth wave of COVID-19 cases. So if you're following the news, you may have seen various doctors, health professionals talking about some signs or indicators that lead them to feel anxious that we are going to see another large rise in COVID-19 cases. We certainly hope that that is not the case. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.